Next up on the stage, I would like to welcome our colleagues from the United Kingdom who have been an important partner in several topics, not just security, not just cooperation, but also advancing. And we can learn a lot from the United Kingdom, of course, when it comes to wind energy as well. So let's welcome on the stage United Kingdom's Trade Commissioner for Europe, Mr. Chris Barton. Welcome.
Well, a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's an enormous pleasure for me to be here today. My name is Chris Barton. I'm the UK's Trade Commissioner for Europe. And that means it is my privilege and pleasure to encourage a thriving trade and investment relationship between the UK and other European countries. It's a privilege and pleasure to do that at any time, because we believe very strongly that trade and investment drives economic growth, it creates jobs, and it improves living standards. But it's a particular pleasure to be doing it here in Latvia. This is my 5th visit to the country in the role, and it underpins how important we see the relationship between the UK and Latvia. We have around €2 billion of trade between us every year, about £1 billion invested in each other's countries. And even more important than that, I think, is that rich tapestry of shared connections between the UK and Latvia. Our outlook on so many issues of the day at the moment are so interlinked, and we have such a range of connections. So it's a complete pleasure to be here, and also important at a time when we are looking as the UK with the EU to restore a really productive and strategic partnership between the UK and the EU, and Latvia is a great friend and ally in that. So thank you very much. And not only is it always a pleasure to be supporting trade and investment, particular pleasure to be doing it here. If you are going to do it on any topic, any sector, what could be better than doing it on offshore wind? And let me say a little bit about a why, a how, and a so what. So first of all, a why. Why do we think that the cooperation between UK and EU, between the UK and Latvia, is so tremendously important on offshore wind? I think a few years ago, if I was answering that question, I would have majored particularly on the environmental reasons. And of course, that is tremendously important, that offshore wind as a low-carbon energy source really matters if we're going to address that fundamental challenge we have of low carbon. And that remains the case. But it's also about more than that. Recent events have absolutely underlined how fundamental the shift to offshore wind, to low-carbon sources more generally, are fundamental to the economic security and the energy security that we crave. And that's one of the reasons why today in London has been referred to. We have got that conference on energy security. And we have all witnessed, haven't we, what happens if you're very dependent on unreliable sources of energy, where you see very volatile prices, then that is not good for a security perspective, and it's not good for the individuals and businesses in our society. So it's really important from a security perspective that we develop offshore wind. And then finally, I'd emphasize, and this is something that's really resonating in the UK, and my sense from discussions that it resonates here too, is that offshore wind has a tremendous opportunity and ability to be driving industrial growth in our economies. We've certainly seen that. There's a real renaissance in parts of the country which have not seen so much economic growth in recent years. Offshore wind, seeing developments in ports, in the supply chain, in manufacturing more generally, which really drives economic growth. And I think that's another reason why we got so much to benefit together from developing offshore wind. So that's the why. Why is the UK so deeply committed to the offshore wind transition? Why are we so deeply committed to doing it together with our partners in Latvia, in the Baltic region, and with the EU? Because yes, it's sustainable, but yes, also it drives security, and it's a key engine for growth. So that's the why. What about the how? I just want to share a couple of perspectives from the UK, where we've seen a very big transition in our approach to renewables and offshore wind in particular. A word on ambition and a word on action. To start with ambition, it was about 18 years ago I worked in the energy department in the UK, in London, and I was given the job of leading our renewable energy work. And I can tell you that that was not a compliment at that time, to be put in charge of renewables. Serious people, the high flyers, thought about oil, they thought about gas, they thought about coal. Renewables were seen as a little bit of a sort of niche subject, which for people who weren't quite up in the A stream doing the serious bits of energy. And then in that time, we were, of course, members of the EU then, and collectively we made a decision that we were going to get 20%, aim for 20% of renewable energy by 2020. And for a time we wrestled with that, and we thought, actually, is that a sensible thing to do? Is it a good thing to do? Is it achievable? Is it economic? And after a lot of internal debate, we decided, yes, it is. And this is something we should go for. And then we set very clear ambitions for ourselves to transform, to give a tenfold increase in renewable electricity and renewable energy in a decade. And once we set that ambition, once we stopped debating, well, should we, shouldn't we, is it possible, is it not possible, once we set that ambition, really went for it, we saw a complete transformation. I remember when we were aspiring on offshore wind, thinking, will we ever get to 1 gigawatt of offshore wind and catch up with our wonderful Danish counterparts who were already at 1 gigawatt? And that's felt like an enormous stretch. And now we're at 15 gigawatts of offshore wind because we've made that determination. And I think having that clear ambition really matters, and we're trying to replicate that now. The government in the UK has got ambition that we said we're at 15 gigawatts of offshore wind now. We want by the end of this decade to get up to as much as 50 gigawatts. We've already got more than halfway there in planning or in construction at the moment. But we want to be very clear about that level of ambition. And certainly our experience has been that if government is absolutely clear about where it's going to go, that it's committed to that change, then industry follows. So it's been really interesting, even earlier this morning, hearing about the Elwind project here, and also the huge potential, 15 gigawatts, I understand, of offshore wind potential here in Latvia, 500 kilometers of coast. What an exciting potential to develop that. And certainly from our experience, we'd say the clearer that you can be in Latvia and elsewhere about that ambition, about what you're trying to do, making sure that delivering a project like Elwind, of course, very significant in and of itself, but more than that, significant in giving the signal to the rest of the world and to investors that this is a place where we're serious about developing offshore wind and we're going to make it happen, will be really transformational. So that ambition side really matters. And the second related side, I would say, is on action. One of the things I noticed when I came back into the renewable energy world, having been out for sort of 10, 15 years doing other things, in a way it was encouraging, in a way it was a little bit dispiriting, that back in 2007, 8, 9, the things we were talking about were grid, the things we were talking about were planning, the things we were talking about were finance, the things we were talking about were supply chain. And come back 15 years later, and what are the things people are talking about? They're talking about grid, they're talking about planning, they're talking about finance, they're talking about supply chain. So, and when I go around Europe, these are challenges that we all face. How do we get those things right? So just a couple of perspectives on those. I would say, first of all, for grid, again, I don't think I've come across a country in Europe which is not seeing the importance of getting the grid to allow that renewable deployment. We're doing that in the UK. We're investing very significantly in the grid infrastructure and changing the way we do it as well, to move from a sort of first come, first served approach to getting grid connection, to saying the first ready is the first connected, and that's important, so you don't get a long tail of people not being able to get the grid connections because they're very, very low down the list. If you're ready, you get the connection. So that grid side is important. The planning side, of course we need robust and clear and strong environmental protections, and we need to make sure that our planning system works. But we hear a lot, both in the UK and elsewhere, there can be a frustration from developers saying it takes a long time and it can be uncertain getting planning. So some of the things we're doing on the UK side is trying to streamline the process for planning, being clearer on what are the priority projects that we think must get seen through the planning system as quickly as possible, engaging at community level to make sure that there is as much support as possible, and rebutting some of the myths that are out there about offshore wind. And we think that's really important for delivering growth in offshore wind. So grid, so planning, finance. I know different models used in different places. We've certainly found in the UK the contracts for difference has been a very powerful model for giving that certainty for investors to put their money into offshore wind. We haven't always got it right. Certainly a couple of years ago we did a round and we didn't get many bidders. We didn't get any bidders and therefore we needed to respond. But one of the things we have found is being flexible then to adjust is really important. So when we had our 5th auction round and we didn't get bids, we very quickly changed and increased, and then the 6th round we got lots of interest. And even now we're looking at ways of evolving our process and our contracts for difference to stretch the criteria, to give a greater clarity on the scheduling, to make sure the contracts last for longer, to make it an absolutely attractive place to invest. And we think that finance is really important. And then finally, just say on the supply chain, again, that is both a challenge and an opportunity for offshore wind, is to get that supply chain developing. And so we have found, again, if you're very clear on the pipeline of what you're trying to do, you give the encouragement for developers to use an appropriate amount of local content. If you invest in the skills, then that is both develops and allows you to secure the benefits of that transition. So those are 4 areas. There are others, but 4 areas, I'd say, of action, which we have found are really important, and certainly when I talk to people around Europe, I think resonate in every market. So in terms of the how, really clear ambition, practical action. Final, very briefly, let me say a thing about so what? What does this mean for people in this room? Well, I'd say, first of all, for any in the room who are policymakers, then the fact that we've had so much shared but sort of different experience in the development of offshore wind and energy more generally makes it as vital as ever that we're learning from each other. We've got lots to learn from Latvia. I know you've got a very significant renewable energy share already. When I spoke back about 2007-8, when we were thinking about renewables, at that stage, the UK was right bottom of the list in the EU in terms of renewables. We've come a lot higher up, but we want to learn from you, and we think we've got a lot of experience to share specifically on offshore wind. So that is an important point from the policy side. Say if you're an investor, if you're a company or a developer and you're interested in opportunities overseas in offshore wind, please look at the UK. We've got so many different parts of the supply chain where we think we've got great opportunities. Of course, in the turbines themselves, foundations and substructures, in the grid connections and cables, operations and management services, all sorts of different opportunities. So if you're interested, please come. We think we can offer you a really exciting place, not just to do great business, but to be doing great things. And then finally, in the other direction, if you are a developer here or part of the supply chain, in the UK, we've got a lot of expertise in all those areas that I've mentioned, and we'd love to partner with you because we think if we're going to achieve this goal, we need to be doing it together. And the British Embassy here is delighted to help if you are a British company wanting to explore opportunities here or a Latvian company interested in the UK. So thank you very much. A great pleasure to be here. I think there are enormous opportunities in offshore wind, so much expertise here. And together, if we do that, not only is it great business, but it's also helping us deliver the low carbon transition we need. It's helping us to ensure the economic and energy security we need, and it's helping us to revive our economies through the supply chain. And what better thing to be working on? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Commissioner.